Shakalaka baka. Oh, back at it again. I like doing this, man.
I think it's really cool, dude. It's really cool because it's just a great place it's a great place to come together and to is to talk. And I think it's something in New Zealand that needs to be promoted more. Like it's something that needs to be like normalized more, you know. And we've been saying it for in regards to men in New Zealand for a long time. But this kind of framework with like podcasts or cast or you know whatever you want to call it is, I think, a really good thing. Yeah.
I agree, man. Thank you for coming and being a part of it.
Thanks for thanks for making it available and bringing me on. It's cool.
We always have good yarns, so why not?
Yeah, I was gonna say anybody who knows me knows I'm a yapper, and it's like it's
fluent in Japanese.
Yeah, fluent in sometimes garbage, but
yeah.
But oftentimes I find there's things that ideas that I have and things that I want to talk about, and I'm like shit, I need an outlet. And oftentimes you're not limited, but like sometimes if you're being like socially conscious, there are certain conversations that you want to have with certain people.
Yeah.
Like I use my parents as an example. There are so many things that I just don't talk to or with my parents about.
Right.
In regards to my life or in regards to the world as a whole, because it's just oftentimes it's not really a productive conversation, and in my experience, it's caused more harm than good.
Do they have quite a different perspective of the world than you?
In some things, yeah, definitely. And in some things, we're very, very similar. And I'm super lucky with my parents and with like how they raised me. The whole nature and nurture conversation before, like it's it's one of my biggest privileges was how I was raised.
Yeah. So what kind of obviously, that being said, which is a beautiful thing, what kind of, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of sort of topics do you find don't tend to be broached with the parents, and like, is there any, not necessarily need to be any reason for that? I think I'm more just curious about what are the topics, because I'm pretty open with my parents.
Yep.
Like, there's very little that I don't tell my parents, but I think sometimes it's more like how much of the truth. Like, I could tell a story without saying all of the details.
Yeah.
You can always.
And there's an art in that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I don't find myself lying to my parents a lot, but I find myself weaponizing the truth a little, and so yeah. But when it comes to topics that like
weaponizing the truth a little. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a bar,
I was like that phrase. Not lying. I'm just weaponizing the truth a little.
Yeah.
So you were saying?
Well, like the conversation, like it's a great question you asked, and the conversation or the topic that I would say, I kind of it's not avoidance of it wholly, but something I really don't like to get in depth with my parents is when it comes to like homosexuality and like the LGBTQ like community and like rights and advocacy and things like that. And I understand that like I'm 26, and a lot of people my age, a lot of people younger, a lot of people older, like have a similar thing here in New Zealand, where it's like you don't really talk about it. It's generational. It's it's how they were raised or whatever. And I'm firmly against that argument. And I think I bring it up in this context, and I bring it up in the context that I just said. Like, I don't talk to my parents about it a lot.
Yeah.
It's because I'm not like homosexual. I'm not actually like a part of the community at all. It's just like throughout my life, through the whole theater kid thing, like a lot of the time with the way that I dress and the way that I act, I'm perceived in a certain way. And
you got a lot of feminine energy, bro.
Huge feminine energy, and it's not something that I have ever like wanted to shy away from. Like some of the coolest people in my life are women.
Yeah, I think it's
awesome. But you like growing up like that and being perceived that way, you feel, a lot of the connotation and a lot of the negativity that comes with that sort of impression and identity. And when it comes to my parents in particular, they have changed like so much over the years. Like we're like when we were growing up, when we were a lot younger, and when I was, like when I was a child, there was actually like a lot of homophobia in the house. It was very casual. It was very like, like whatever. It was very very
Just
social homophobia.
like laughed at.
Yeah, like laughed at, like joked at. It was never serious, and it was never malicious
Right.
from my parents or anything. But it was there, and
Yeah.
it was like as I grew older and as I became confused and then gained clarity through experience or like however. We don't sugarcoat it. I gave the gay thing a go, and it didn't really pan out. And
Right. Not for you.
and no, but like in
Gotta
conversation with my parents, the conversations we have now versus when I was like 17 and really confused are very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think that comes because I have been really staunch on my viewpoints and my opinions in terms of like advocacy and in terms of not being scared to confront my father in particular about how he was coming across when he says a lot of this shit. And whether he's changed his ways because he got so sick and tired of me calling him out, or whether or not it's actually like made an impression on him in the last 10 years. Because it has been 10 years and it's really interesting because I don't have the same conversations, and like how we got into this topic, talking about things that I don't really bring up. It's like we don't get into it because we don't really need to. Like I don't really call him out anymore because he doesn't say that shit.
Yeah.
And you talk to my mum, and like my mum's like, like he doesn't change when I'm around.
Yeah.
He doesn't shift up, especially now that I live up these ways and I don't see them very often. Because I've asked her about it. I asked like, does dad change when we're here versus when we're not? And that's just like little things that I'm like psychologically interested in about because like psychologically my father is such an interesting like dude. Like when you like he is, and I'm pretty confident like he'll never see this. But
I was about to say,
like I'm pretty confident the only one who could screw that up would be Aiden.
Yep, true.
But like I would never ever like talk poorly towards him. Like
He's just speaking openly.
But just very openly. And he, but going back to what I was saying before, he has changed so much.
Right.
And there's not actually that tension anymore between us because it doesn't need to be. And I feel like the whole adage of like you can't teach an old dog new tricks is horse shit.
Yeah, it's not true.
And there's just like there's a level of like don't get me wrong, the world changes and it changes unbelievably quickly. Even like in our age, trying to keep up with which social media app things are happening on, or like who's doing what. Like things change so quickly, and it can be really difficult to keep up with those changes. But it's possible, especially with the important things like people's human rights.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's good to see growth in those areas from people like your parents. My dad once said, it wasn't actually that long ago, and he just said, I just hope that you guys realize that I'm always still learning as well. And I think it's true, and it's it's a real factor. Parents being just people that are learning and trying their best as well, and I think it's cool that you're able to chat about all of that, and I like that you're free to open yourself up and talk about it all, and I think that's the point of doing this podcast for me, is for it to be just as open and honest as people want to be, and be vulnerable and talk about the sort of the roots of our lives and whatever those roots reflect in terms of our opinions of the world.
Yeah.
Because that's all anyone has. You can, even if you're at the top of the mountain, you can only see so far, like you've got to recognize that we're all sort of painting a picture of the world from our corner of it. So it's hard for anyone to really have a good view of all of it, and it's understandable that when it comes to these conversations, people just, we're going to talk about whatever it is that's close to us and what's, what's important to us and how those important people or things that have happened in our lives have affected the way that we perceive things, bro, and shaped us, and that's exactly what you're doing. And I think it's beautiful, man. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I like it, bro. And it's funny when you mention stuff like Aiden, being able to, turn it into that real life situation.
Yeah, dude, there's
But
like the interconnectedness of
Yeah.
like life and of everything and of us and our
Yeah.
relationship and how our relationships interconnect.
yeah, dude.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is this is also a real tight knit community. Like everybody that comes on here is somebody that I know. So there's a good chance that other people that have been on the pod and that have talked about stuff, and it's awesome to see stories relate and people that are on the podcast relate. And the last episode with Harley, he was listening in because Liam had been on before that, and it's a cool sort of domino effect that's happening, and I love it. Like this is the second day in a row that I've done this as well. And
You did one last night.
yeah, I did one last night, so it's cool. I was
Right.
going to do two yesterday. I was going to do you and Harley, and then now it's worked out that we did today, which is great. I like how that's worked out, because I think in a way too, doing one a day is kind of enough, because doing more than that it can feel somewhat repetitive and sometimes turn into me cutting off really long trains of thought that people could have in order to sort of get to some sort of conclusion for me, rather than just let the ball roll and keep it open and let people flow and give their perspective of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I know that you are also the first in terms of people's perspectives of it that I've seen come with notes. And I think that's so sick.
It's strange, but I had certain things that like in particular that I wanted to remember at least, and because I do it all the time. It's part of the reason why I barely go anywhere without this little like notebook thing.
Yeah.
Because there's always just something that like I pride myself on. I pride myself on the way that because I'm most definitely like a creative and a creator.
Yeah, bro.
And I'm a story writer in particular. And I pride myself on my ability to, write a lot of my stuff kind of like Jay-Z. It was just like in my head so much of the time. And the difficulty is getting it out of like my head and onto paper, onto something that other people can appreciate without me having to sit there for 4 hours and talk to them about it.
Yeah.
However, having this and carrying this everywhere, because I don't really like doing it on my phone.
It's not the same.
Nah, it's not the same. It doesn't give me the right buzz. But yeah, writing things down in the moment is really, I think, important for me as both like a person and a creative.
Yeah, it helps alleviate the pressure.
Yeah, and because pressure's a good word actually, because it's pressure. Sometimes in order to remember a good idea, or sometimes in order to figure out and process whether or not the idea is good, and and you're never going to be in the right place at the right time and that kind of stuff. Like you'll be at work or you'll be in the middle of something, and it's good to just have like a couple seconds to jot something down.
So what have you got? What's on the list?
I got I really like the idea of talking about masculinity, and I think masculinity and gender and gender identity is a topic that kind of weaves into like a lot of stuff that I like talking about. Like I mentioned before, the whole nature and nurture, and also things, because kind of like gender impacts society massively. You see it like in things like education, and that's a really interesting topic, because I did a year of a Bachelor of Social Work, and that year, because I didn't finish it, but that first year kind of scratched the surface for me in terms of human development,
Right.
and understanding human development and understanding how varied it can be, and how how different it is person to person, case to case, was really something I was interested in, and I've done reading since having dropped out, and it's also something that I think impacts everybody's life. It's like when you come to development and how you come to development, and especially like the environment in which I think you can say it for like school, you can say it for work, you can say it for your like social life. Development impacts everywhere. You look at like rugby, for example. someone like me, who was the shortest kid in school and who weighed, like next to a feather, I was never going to be the captain of the first 15. You know, like, or if I was going to have to break some glass ceilings in terms of what was possible by a 13-year-old. So, like that changes, like, or, like your development in high school, I think in particular is an area that I find really, really crucial and also fascinating to talk about, because everybody had a different experience in high school. Mine was an experience of like growth and of discovery, and high school I was really lucky, massively lucky in high school, but it certainly wasn't like a fairy tale.
No, it never is.
Largely that was because of my development, coming in being shorter than most of the girls and leaving at year 13 being, like over 6 foot. And, puberty gave me some like conventionally attractive traits, which was dope, and has helped me in life so many times, whether I was aware of it or not.
Hard.
And again, like, I'll talk about privilege, and I'll talk about my privilege, probably most of all, mainly. I won't really talk about privilege of other people, but my privilege, I try and be super aware of it. And it's not like a bad thing. It's super helpful as a white dude. But the awareness, I think, is
it's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, is
for sure
is key, And I love the conversation about privilege, but again, I think, like, going back to what I said at the beginning, that conversation will change depending on who you're talking to, and that conversation will be perceived in what we're doing now based upon who is observing it. It's like the universe, frequencies. Who's operating on what, and who can even really comprehend how we see privilege, because, have they lived the same life as us?
No one lives the same life.
Or a similar life, because I think people can look at the world through similar lenses. Like Absolutely. You and I, gender, going back to that. You and I can look at the world through a male lens. That's not really debatable or disputable. There's advantages and disadvantages when it comes to that within our culture and within our species.
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Like the lens, like a male lens. What does that mean to you?
Like a male lens. If you think about how I was raised, I come from a family of very clearly like protectors and providers and like working men and like salt of the earth, are like honest to God good men. And
right.
Like I was raised in that kind of environment, and I was raised to sort of to idolize certain things. Like my dad cuts down trees for a living, and I thought the bush and the bush work was the coolest thing in the world growing up. It was the first job I had out of high school, was working in forestry. However, I was uncomfortable in a lot of ways, and that wasn't a bad thing. And I was pushed in a lot of ways, and that wasn't a bad thing. But it wasn't a world that I was necessarily very built for. And when you look at like lenses of society, I was basing a lot of my self-worth on traits that were very physically demanding. Like going to work and doing a really hard day's work and coming home and feeling so shattered. It takes a Saturday and Sunday to recover just to get ready for Monday. And it just made me really unhappy. And then I made a change into hospitality. And, it was a world where I could use gifts that I was given, using my ability to talk and to communicate and to connect with people. Yeah. So yeah, like looking at like the male lens, like everything is varied. Sometimes the male lens changes into the female lens, or sometimes the male lens was always the female lens. Yeah. It's just that there was, there was some biological things that have gone on.
Yeah, I like to, if we're doing this analogy of lenses, I'd rather say there's like, everybody's got their own pair of glasses.
Absolutely.
You see the world through, and if you spend enough time with other people, you swap glasses and check things out from their point of view for a little while, and it's I think it's a good thing to do. And in terms of the importance of masculine energy, I think it's what's the word for it? It's it's of the utmost importance. Same with feminine energy. You know, needs to be both of those things pumping. You know, and everybody in their own way should have a good dose of both.
Yeah.
And that's the spice of life. You know, it's the good stuff.
And you can appreciate like you said there, the fluidity between like masculine energy and feminine energy. You know, like my dad can't cook, like at all.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and like my mother actually, that's the interesting thing. And this might just come down to my personal lot and my parents as a whole. But there's quite a few things that I could list that my father can't really do that my mother can. And it doesn't work the same way quite as
Right.
much outside of like, the physical things like lifting
Yeah.
a big heavy chainsaw or going to work all day from, like sun up to sundown and then coming
Yeah.
home and still chatting and stuff.
Those are pretty big things, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're always got to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about like equality and equity, because it's like you have to be realistic, and that's where you run into a lot of arguments when it comes to gender and gender roles and fluidity between them. Is you have to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why there's an argument around trans athletes competing in sports who haven't undergone or who have undergone certain hormone therapies or
Yeah.
like there's
That stuff's pretty wild.
it's a tough conversation to have, man. Like,
Yeah.
and it's
reckon
something that is weaponized a lot. Like you saw Donald Trump or whoever it was try and bring up that trans athlete that had broken a record in that ultra marathon or that super marathon when it was a open gender event. It was open. The men and women competed.
Right.
And this trans athlete still won and broke a record, and the whole thing was overshadowed by a 10-second clip from that guy.
Yeah. I think that it's like transgender people should do their own Olympics, because there's going to be more of them, right? As time goes on.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It's interesting.
Got like your whole own thing. You can you'll be first, and you set all the records and like start a fresh thing.
Yeah.
If there's that much backlash about it, because competing's what they want to do, right? So it's like, if you can have either segregated or completely open things, that's the best way to go. It's like completely open is the obvious choice, but at the moment what we have is like semi-segregated with a new version of a human not really knowing where to go within each of the lines because both camps seem to have a problem with it in some sort of way. So, it's going to be a source of conflict for people and something that people are going to get confused about and not understand and compare, because that's what people do. But it's all kind of a necessary pressure, because that's what invites change and inspires whatever is to come, which is the right way to go, which is, directed by what people feel about what's going on and what action is taken dependent upon that.
Yeah.
So as much as I do think that it's, anyone can have their opinion, it's not like any one opinion is what makes a difference. It's sort of a collection of all of it, and that's a big part of what the conversation concept is about. Is it's more than just a simple discussion that you can have. It has the ability to be something absolutely amazing, but it requires people to have the awareness of its existence and the willingness to do something about that. And that's something that doesn't just appear overnight, People gain meaning from understanding, and people get understanding from experience, and that's why it takes time for people to grow into new things and for there to be big changes. And I think the reason I have I don't want to call it an issue, but I think it's more like me and myself, because I feel very hypocritical, right? Because I believe in talking about this concept and this change, but I get conflicted inside, and I feel like upset and sad for when I hear people talking about things that I don't consider to be as important. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to, because you have a level of what's most important to you. And that's going to make you perceive somebody's reaction to a certain thing that may not be as important to you as overdone or exaggerated or too much or whatever, or somebody's reaction not being enough because you think something's more important, you know? So yeah, it's kind of hard to ever really criticize, but I must like anyone else for doing so, but I must admit that when it comes to this concept, I feel it's hard for me to find any wiggle room or stuff that's more important than things you wouldn't concern yourself with if you were hungry, you know?
Yeah.
I sort of said that to Harley last night, and I like that concept, and it's a really good way to put it. It's like, what do you care about when you're hungry, you know? Food.
Yeah.
You can't, it's not as if people are getting satiated by a lot of the things that we spend our time obsessing over these days. There's so much stuff that we consume our time with that doesn't necessarily have an end goal, but you get a certain amount of dopamine out of worrying, and somehow it feels as though you're contributing. But you are in a way. I don't know. It's a funny one, man. Like I said, it is somewhat hypocritical with me having my perspective and assuming it's the right way to be. It's like, well, who's to say, you know? And I guess that's why I'm talking to people about it.
This is a place to share your perspective. 100%.
Yeah.
And this is a way that we, as two straight dudes, look at the situation.
Yep.
You know, like with our understanding, and I think the cool thing about this, and the thing that I think is dope, is it then goes online, and it then gets viewed by people with, different views and different opinions. And then there's
It's also
kind of like a secondary podcast that then happens after the fact.
It's definitely a secondary experience. I mean, every time somebody has the conversation, it's like another podcast.
Yeah.
But it's also immortalized when you put it online, you know, as long as, the whole world doesn't collapse.
Apocalypse.
I'd say if the internet goes, we're probably going to have a little bit of trouble for a while.
Yeah.
But then, maybe not. People are very good at working out how to overcome crazy shit.
Yeah.
To not put it very beautifully. But yeah, I think it's something that will always be, is that people endure. They want to be and they want to live, and they'll do whatever it takes to do that and provide for the people around them so that they can do that as well. And that's a beautiful trait to have, man.
Yeah. No, I completely agree.
But yeah,
you actually brought up a few things. Like,
so you're writing stuff down. Yeah. I love this, bro. This is sick.
You brought up a few things in your in what you were talking about there that I really like, and one of them actually is like what I just call like living versus survival.
Right.
Which is like you were talking about what do you want when you're hungry?
Yeah.
It's like, is you want to eat, right? Yeah. And like the whole concept of that is there are things in this world that we need to exist and to survive, and then there are things in this world that we need to be sustained in ways that you can't just get from the earth or from eating or drinking or actually like consuming.
Yeah, just staying alive.
Yeah, just staying alive. And I think that's where, because it ties in so well, actually. I'm kind of working this out in my head right now.
You got it.
Because you were talking about this whole living versus survival, and I think that's a massive point to bring up when talking about the point of life and what is life. And it's different for every person, but we're at a point now in society and in the world that we live in where survival is so it's not for a lot of people.
Yeah.
However, survival is really easily obtainable.
Yeah, in the first world. Yeah.
First world, absolutely. Like, it's like we're living. Like I drove here in my own car.
Yeah.
And I had a full meal. Like, it's, like I say that being aware of the whole privilege thing. But what is the point of life now? And I've been going through my late teens, early 20s, trying to figure that out. And I'm in a better position to talk about this now than I think I ever have been, which is funny because present moment, I think, in 30 minutes, I'll be even more qualified to talk about this. But, the thing is I think life, the meaning of life to me is finding a balance between fulfilling myself through things like, like I get a lot of fulfillment in the job that I work, and doing good work in that job, and helping people oftentimes in that job. However, it's finding a balance between doing that to make a paycheck, to survive, to feed myself, and to pay my rent, and to get my cats food, and to do those things that aren't, what ifs. They are the things. And then being able to go to Hastings and spend $100 on oil paints. Yeah. It's finding that balance, which I think is different for everybody, but this ties into like the idea of comfort. Yeah. And something that has literally changed my life is at the end of last winter, I started taking every single shower I take, I finish it on the coldest setting physically possible. Yeah, good. And it's so, typical like guys, get into their late teens, late 30s or their 30s, and they start taking ice baths.
That's good for you, man.
It's changed my fucking life, and it's because I hate doing it every time.
It works.
I don't want to do it, and it's like
you get so many good like endorphins and
there's
chemicals in your brain. Yeah,
I don't understand the science, but it is behind it.
Yeah, you get happier. You can't get out of an ice bath less happy than when you went in. You're always going to get out and have a rush.
And the idea of progress as well. Like when I was first starting, I'd chuck it onto like almost the coldest. Yeah. And I'd be there like having like a fucking like shock. Yeah. Because it's so cold. And then the more I did it, the easier it got and the longer I could last. And then, I realized that breathing actually plays a key role. And once I got my breathing down, it's like it's nothing to me now. But I know how good it is. Yeah. And I'm actually at the point coming into this winter, it'll be interesting to see if because it gets colder. It's colder in the mornings, colder at nights, and the water will be colder.
I'm
actually, I'm quite excited. But the key is to do it every single time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I completely understand what you mean about those micro progressions and how it ties into the balance of your, survival and living. Yeah. And I think that this is something I really wish I had brought up with Harley last night, because he was talking about how he kind of needs the pressure and likes it. And it's sort of a big part of his why. But I suppose something that is worth considering and saying is that the conversation concept and the idea of those three things being free, you don't have to take it, It's not like it's a compulsory thing that you have to take free food. If you want to like pay for it and, buy stuff and buy your own things and do it in that way, then great. Like the money you spend on it will just go towards it again. It'll just loop back around for the next person who needs one, Yeah. I suppose that's how it would work. That would be a good way to do it. Then, it's not as if you have to be a part of it. You can provide for yourself and your family and do things in your own way if you would prefer to do that. And it's not like everybody has to be on the benefit, but it's still there, for people that do choose to be on it.
Yeah. You see that's really it, because it's about changing the system to make everything easier for everybody. Yeah. Not necessarily just profitable for the few. And the idea of changing the system, because that term and that concept, it's really scary to people. They hear that and they think, about all of Les Miserables and the French Revolution. They think, it
has to be messy.
They think it's going to be messy, and I don't necessarily think it does, because if you look, we've actually been changing systems for our entire life, and I use Te Reo and like Te Ao, like Maori, in terms of its culture and its influence in our systems and in our governments, and in terms of adherence to like the Treaty of Waitangi. Yeah. And this is so cool, because it loops back into one of the things I don't talk to my parents about. and it's again not because it's not because they're against the idea of like even co-governance, or against the idea of changing place names, or changing like oranga tamariki instead of like SIFs or something like that. It's not that they're against that. It's that they look at it like, oh my God, we've got to change the whole system.
It's a big job.
It's a big job. And I use the example with my mother, like in terms of healthcare, because it's not a strange concept, and it's not an unknown fact that Maori people, oftentimes they like to, or oftentimes healthcare is looked at in a different way than it is, for Pākehā. Yeah. And this is something that I talk about not with like a massive amount of knowledge, but I have, I through my job last year, I actually did a little bit of training, like a little bit of formal training in terms of Pacifica worldview and Maori worldview and things like Modi and they're kind of like, like this, the spiritual nature of how they do a lot of things. And it's just very, very different to Pākehā ways. And in the system that everybody lives in currently, there's not a lot of room for that way of healing and for that holistic approach. And for it's really difficult, because everybody you got to go to a GP, you got to get a referral in terms of funding and availability of traditional methods of healing and of wellness. There's so much less. So the idea of changing the system would simply be about bringing a little bit more balance in. Is just to bring a little bit of funding, a little bit of infrastructure in terms of a different way of healing. Yeah. And it's not like just because it's there, Pākehā can't use it. I don't have a single drop of Māori blood in me. Yeah. And it has, both benefited me and not benefited me in my life. I'm a second generation Kiwi. However, I don't see myself not being open and available to using this separate way of healing. Yeah. If the system were to allow it. Right. So I think it could be actually beneficial for everybody instead of looking at it like, like Māori just want their own hospitals. Yeah. And, Māori just want their own like this or that. It's about equal opportunity and equity. And if you look at it like that, and if you break the systems down, and if you see how the systems in little ways can change, it's actually a lot more realistic and it's a lot less scary. Yep. However, having that understanding, I don't claim to actually have it. Yeah. And I don't claim to. There's little things that I think like, oh shit, actually what if we did things like that? Or like, what if we, hang on, what if this, but then you see our government doing things like saving $80 million on school lunches. And you see that priorities are in different places in terms of our like the ruling body and shit.
Yeah, I definitely haven't done enough research into New Zealand politics, and I don't and haven't for a long time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, well, it's not as if I just haven't made the time basically, and I think that it's an ignorant way to put it to just say I just want to focus on this conversation concept, but I think a better way to put it would be that I find that this is where I will have the most efficacy in terms of my time spent, my impact on a positive message that I'm giving to people, and my way of finding out about New Zealand politics and stuff that is happening, because naturally during these conversations I do find out heaps of stuff that people talk about where I just go, oh, I've never heard of that before. Tell me about that.
And it's the beauty of the space.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's a tough one to have have been aware of it for so long and to spend your time in that mindset. But I do believe that people that have that knowledge and spend their time invested in politics and stuff are like, they're doing good things, because somebody needs to be paying attention. I'm definitely not.
And there's a lot, because it is a topic that, and I kind of use the whole school lunches thing. I don't almost to test the waters, because some people are really responsive when it comes to talking about politics, and some people are really like, oh god, like no, I don't want to talk about politics. Right. And I think that like it's not really something that I kind of want to dive into here, because I didn't really prepare anything. And when it comes to politics,
that's okay.
Being prepared, and because we see the danger of misinformation and malinformation, and we see the danger of places like Joe Rogan where like they kind of the influences for so many, and all they have to do is say one little thing, and I would hate to come across here as just kind of like spitballing or whatever when it comes to politics and when it comes to policy and the real world things that are actually impacting Kiwis. Yeah. However, one thing I will say, which I have said to a couple of my family members, my brother in particular, who's one of these people who's like, whoa, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do when the vote happens. Like I have no idea about who's doing what or whatever. Social media, we are both cursed and blessed by it, right? So things that I encourage people to do, like you or like anybody watching, is go on social media and visit, because every political party and most politicians will have a social media page. You can go to those pages. It's super easy. Yeah. And you can see how many people are actually like on the ground and talking to real Kiwis you know, in the big city centers, and you know, like Auckland and Wellington, or representatives even here in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah.
You know, like I've yarned to Stuart Nash over the bar and at a, you know, like at a council, like a hall meeting and stuff.
Yeah.
So what I do and what I encourage people to do is to look at representation in parties in terms of like cultural representation, gender representation, things like that, and then also see who they're actually talking to, and how easy it is to actually get, you know, like how easy it is to actually converse with these people who are running our country. Because the only time David Seymour actually even talks to real Kiwis is when they're shouting at him over reporters. You know, like there's a disconnect and there's a divide between a great number of people who are making the decisions that impact an even greater number of people.
Yeah.
And I think that would be kind of where, yeah, just like the first step to do, and even paying attention to politics lightly to get informed for the up and coming election would just be to see their social media presence. Because I mean, someone like Chloe Strawbrick, for example, so much of her, even the Greens page as a whole, is like they're on the ground and they're talking to people, and they're like, you know, they're campaigning for, you know, like this, that, and the other. But there seems to be a lot more engagement with, oh man, this is so funny. Engagement with the people. Because I told you I wanted to talk about like One Piece and stuff. And there was actually like, there's some weird like parallels and stuff you could draw here. Like, I think Alabasta sucks. Because it's an arc. It's an arc that, you know, there'll be some people who will very much disagree with that like statement. But like King Nefertari didn't like try and talk to the people once about where the water was going. You know, and then over 2 years, a rebellion formed. And then the rebellion were fighting the wrong people because Crocodile took all the water. So it all could have been fixed by wandering down to a town hall and being like, hang on, like, you know, like rebellion, what's going on? Why are you guys upset? And they're like, you've got all the water. And then you could have been like, I don't have all the water. I don't know what you're talking about. But there's this guy in the middle of the desert who lives in a casino on a lake. Maybe he has all the water, you know, like this. And that... No, I won't go into that because but it's, you know, it's what I said about all the parallels in the world.
For context, you're talking about One Piece.
Yeah.
The anime.
Yes, yeah, the anime.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. It's actually wild to hear you talk about it so passionately and sort of understand how people feel when I talk about stuff like that passionately that have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And because it makes you like, you know, it gets, at least for me anyway, it gets people like invested and involved.
So One Piece is quite, you've drawn a lot of comparisons to it in a lot of ways to a lot of things that you've talked about, but the main sort of stream of it that you were talking about in relation to the conversation concept was that Luffy is on a mission just basically to liberate everybody and give people that. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
You know,
I'm all for it.
It's like, it's got an impact where, you know, like I've seen a meme where it's like, man, I just wish that I could give Luffy half my McChicken. And when I can't afford another one, he like kicks the shit out of Christopher Luxon or something, you know? And because that's like, that's, you know, the bones of a lot of the story, you know, like it's layered and it's complex and it's a beautiful story. But the crux of it is that Luffy is just this guy who goes through the world and he sees like inequality and injustice and oppression, and especially when it comes to necessities like food, water, shelter, safety. And he's just like, nah, like I've got the power to, and I'm going to change this. Oh yeah. And it's done through, you know, the lens of an anime, you know, like it's like it was in Shonen Jump, you know, this guy's going through and just like beating up all of the bad guys. However, there's a lot of things, especially in like the recent, like Wano, there's a lot of stuff surrounding, like you've got a massive population of people who have access to none of the resources that they have the rights to. And you have people who've come from overseas and who have destabilized the government and taken over the resources, and you've disproportionately affected the majority, as in like 99% of the population, 1% of the population. And we see that now in the real world, and we've seen that in the real world over and over and over again. And I think that's the beauty, because people like One Piece for different reasons, and I've spoken to people who like it for the reason of that it is so reflective. Yeah. And it's crazy to have, you know, because it's a story about pirates who, you know, like they can eat these fruits called devil fruits, and then they gain these magical abilities to, you know, like become a gum man or become a smoke man. And you know, it's goofy, it's wacky. There's an entire island full of drag queens that chase around one of the main characters for 2 years. And then he comes back and he is powered up as fuck. Like, it's so goofy. And that's amazing for so many reasons. But if you're looking past that, some of these themes are powerful for the reason that they are like real world themes and real world problems, and they are solved not necessarily in real world realistic ways. However, I think what I was mentioning to you in the kitchen before is One Piece is that, like, I don't know if I'm being crazy. Like, I'm reading the manga at the moment, and I'm planning to get caught up before it finishes, because I really don't know if this is just like a weird thing that I'm cooked on, or if other people are thinking this. But the timing is ridiculous. This dude Ichiro Oda has been writing this for longer than I've been born, longer than I've been alive, and we're coming up to a point now where, like I said, there's 5 dudes or there's like 6 dudes who control everything. They've got all the wealth, all the power, all the influence, all of the control, and the story seems to be going in the direction of rebelling against that and destabilizing that. And you know, like, I won't draw any like hard parallels, but there's people in our world who are doing just that. And you know, like, and it's quite spooky to think about the timeline, and you know, like, whenever he plans to finish this anime, because it's still ongoing. It's like, it's actually just come back, weekly release, I believe. So I'm quite excited. I'm actually, like, I don't think I've ever been as invested in a piece of media as I have been in One Piece.
Hell
it's
yeah,
really,
dude.
It's really cool.
It's how many episodes are we talking here?
It's like in the 1100s.
Get out of town.
Yeah, dude. Like, it's pretty gnarly. You can actually read it faster than you can watch it.
I could probably just fucking fix all of this on this planet in real life
before you
watch all of that, bro. If I'm gonna put that much time into something, I might as well put it into this.
Yep.
1100 episodes. How long? 20 minutes?
No, so
40
like,
minutes?
Okay, yeah. So they're like the manga, the anime, sorry, is crazy long. You know, it's getting
What's
up to
the math on
it's
that,
getting up
bro?
to Pokemon. Like, it would take you years to watch it realistically, or a year to watch it realistically. But if you look at it from a book sense, if you look at it especially from a word count sense, because it's a manga, right?
Yeah.
It's like 6 books.
Oh.
It's like 6 books of, you know, between you know, like, kind of Lord of the Rings size, you know. But that's not ridiculous. I just finished.
What's that, like 600? Are they big?
Yeah, like 5 to 600.
Okay.
But I just finished a series of books written by a guy named Raymond Feist, and that's 30 books long. And especially in terms of word count, it completely trumps like One Piece. So reading it is actually I'm finding a lot faster than like, I'm almost caught up to where I'm in the anime at Alabasta, because and I'm rewatching it, by the way, as well. So I've seen it once, and I've actually gone back.
Yeah.
But I'm reading it faster. I'm catching up to myself. So it'll be really interesting. But also, people talk about like high fantasy, and people talk about books like Lord of the Rings and like Raymond's books in the Rift War saga. Like, One Piece is high fantasy, to be honest with you. Like, there's a couple of things.
What's high fantasy versus fantasy?
High fantasy would be this, like, you know, like, you could look at it through loads of different ways. It could be how it's written. You know, like, Tolkien is well known for being almost like, especially in our you know, like, in our fast-paced day, his books are quite difficult to read because they're so descriptive, and the language that's used is incredibly elegant, and he takes pages describing the dew on the leaves of the bush that these hobbits are walking past. And so there's elements of that, and then there's also elements of like of attention to detail in terms of world building. There's rules that must be adhered to. You can't just go around making a power scaling system that doesn't work, or making a you know, like a governmental system that doesn't work, and that's why books like Raymond's written 3 books with a chick named Jenny Wirtz, and they're called they're set on a planet named Calawan, and there's very little action in them. A lot of it's just politics, and a lot of it is the governmental system, but it's the detail and the depth that they go into is just as entertaining as any battle in my eyes. And I think One Piece falls into this category because you know, like, foreshadowing for one, like attention to detail, and Oda's clear vision for the story and for the world that he wanted to create, I think is worthy of high fantasy. Plus, he is officially one of the top 10 most sold authors in history,
Right.
which is crazy for a number of reasons. Because obviously you got like Shakespeare sold billions of books, but
Yeah.
Oda's up there, and he's the only non-novelist. So he's the only manga writer to be on that top 10 list, which I think is really cool.
That is pretty crazy.
It's also multinational, you know, like it's touched a lot of people in a lot of ways across the world because it's written by a Japanese guy and it's a manga and it's an anime, which is inherently something Japanese. But you go to Skypiea, and it's like there's such a heavy influence from Pacifica and Maori and
To where?
Skypiea, sorry, and another arc in One Piece that happens where they travel to an island that's in the sky on clouds and stuff.
Well, you're talking about a place here.
But no, sorry, no, like it's in the story, but it's, you know, like the tattoos they have, the dresses, the stuff that they wear, even, you know, like in a pretty flexible kind of way, you know, like the political system that they have on this island is kind of almost clearly Maori or Pacifica.
Right.
And it's done in a way that I think connects so many different cultures. And, you know, Alabaster, for example, is a, you know, like it's desert. It gives a very sort of a Middle Eastern kind of aesthetic. And you see these aesthetics throughout the entirety of the show in characters and in places. And that's why I think it appeals to so many people is it does represent such a diverse group of people, and and even just the simple things like the art, away from the story and the dialogue. It's really cool, and I need to stop talking about it.
Nah, not at all.
It's something that
I think there's a few, you know, shows for everybody. I'm sure there's different ones that resonate with people in terms of their life and their worldview, or the things that have happened in history or are happening now. And I think that's because art is a reflection of life and an extension of it. It's creation, and it's bound to be related to whatever the experiencer of that reality who created that art has experienced, you know. And, you know, for me, there's Avatar, The Legend of Aang, you know, and Korra. I mean, respectfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, there's some crazy parallels in terms of how to look after oneself, carry oneself, and also, you know, how people are affected by big things like war and stuff like that. There's a lot of really deep and meaningful
Hugely philosophical
arcs and stuff within that series.
Yep.
And then you've got stuff
Look
like
at
fuck yeah, you got to shout out Iroh just for
dumb man.
But like recently, I saw a clip of the Bugs Life movie, bro. And I think I'm on a Bugs Life vibe. I think that if I'm going to connect anything to, you know, a movie and talk about something that I think pertains to the world in a very simple and also powerful way, is Bugs Life, man. And it's just that scene of the grasshopper coming up and the ant standing up and going, I'm pretty sure that there's more of us and we're way stronger than you say we are, and I think you know it. And I think that as much as we can have conversations with the underlying tones of wanting to make sure that we don't, you know, we always consider our privilege and we always talk about how lucky we are. And, you know, I think it's a fantastic thing, but it's also some sort of weird social etiquette that's come from the coping mechanism of looking at the world as if you should always be grateful because you could have less. That's what being in the middle class is, which is what the majority of people are, right? So if that's the majority of people that have also coincidentally the majority of influence in terms of democracy, because all the first world countries that are typically the most developed and have the best, like, you know, democracies there are, you have the most influence, you have the most ability to contribute. We as a collective, all we have to do is align on something, and that's the part that brings it back to the Bugs Life thing. You can't do it with a couple of ants, you know. And it's not that we're ants, because we're not. We're more than that. We always have been and we always will be, but we also have to acknowledge that we have a role to play within this playground that we've created, because some people are getting bullied and we're just okay with that because we're not getting bullied. So, you know, we need to do a little bit of sorting out and just let everybody know that, it's time to stop being an asshole to one another. Sharing's caring. Bring it back to the basics, and then continue running around on the playground, bro, because there's so much other stuff to do beyond that. It's just interesting that we're currently in this place where that's not that unified aspect of it isn't there. And it's not about unification in terms of everyone being on the same page and agreeing about absolutely everything. It's about whether or not we can get people on the same page to agree about these simple 3 things.
These big things, these important
things. They're
things.
huge, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
It is at the moment, but that shouldn't be everything.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be the pinnacle of your life to say that you survived. It's like, congratulations, bro.
Yeah.
But like, if this is a simulation or if this is a whatever, it doesn't matter. When you come out of the other side of this, no one survives. Everyone dies. We all die. So what are we even talking about? It's like, let's just, forgive me. I do sometimes start with a simple point and become overly passionate. Dive into it,
Because your passion hasn't complicated things like at all. And I think that we've actually, in this conversation, touched on really important parts of the solution to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the first one's education. You want to talk about our power as the analogy that you used, ants, right? And the only way in this society, because we're not all going to march down to the beehive and tear the head off Christopher Luxon, realistically.
Not yet.
So, how we as ants have our power, you're
all good. I like it.
Is with the voting. And is with the government, and is with our decision in terms of our place in this democracy.
100%.
And so you talk about trying to get us to agree on the main things. It's my belief that that education is kind of like the foundation, it's the start of it all. And I think there's a disconnect in terms of politics and education, and I think that's intentional. I think that a lot of people, especially because we are allowed to vote at 18, they don't necessarily want a lot of the younger population even going out to vote. So I think that there's a lot that can be done between parties like Green or Labour or even National to reach out to a younger demographic and a younger audience and actually clearly communicate their intentions and what they will do. And then you have this other thing where it's like, you need to do what you will do, and you must, we need honest people in these positions of power. And one of the things that I loved about the job that I had last year was we used to I worked in a respite home where people used to come and stay. We used to take them through their rights, and we were advocates for them. And one of my favorite ones was you have the right to be explained something to do with your health or your well-being or your movements or your whatever. These were minors as well. You have the right to be explained things in a way that you understand, which is so fucking important. It's important across the board. Health, education, everything is you have the right to be explained something in a way that you understand it. And for politicians like Christopher Luxon to come out and to speak the way that he does. Like, dude, even that Mike, Hosking or whatever, called him out on his radio show because he just won't answer these freaking questions, man. It's all this corporate jargon, this legal speak, this hopping around the mumbo jumbo, we plan to, we will do, we want to, we're trying to. No, give me a yes or a fucking no. Because a lot of people who watch the news and a lot of people who will then go out and have just as much say as Christopher Luxon or as you and as me don't understand that, or they don't want to understand that, or it's something that they look at and it's like, it confuses them, they're adverse to it, they don't want to look at it. But they don't realize that Christopher's actually talking about, cutting your benefit, or Christopher's talking about cutting funding to Youthline and other social services that are, first off, crucial, and second off, underfunded to begin with. And I think that it's weaponized. It's weaponized in New Zealand and across the world, and that these politicians communicate in a way that leaves a lot of us scratching our head. Like, hang on, do I agree with that or don't I agree with that? And then we all go together and we have our own little conversations, and somebody who thinks they understand it or somebody who does understand it, there's a lot of misinformation or a lot of partially gleaned information from a lot of what these politicians say.
Yeah. Have you heard of a citizens initiate referendum?
Is it the one that needs like X amount of signatures before it like has to be seen by like
Yeah.
whatever body or okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm familiar with the concept.
It's 10,000.
10,000 is fucking, oh my God,
So achievable.
it's so achievable, right?
So achievable.
Like when it comes to things that every human being needs,
Dude,
like it's so doable.
We could get 10,000 in New Zealand.
And actually, because this ties into another thing that I was going to bring up, sorry, I hate to cut you off,
That was all I had to
but this
say.
is like a whole circle thing.
Keep going.
Is that the key for us as everyday people, and the key, I think, in changing the world, and this really bold statement, but I can back it up in so many different ways,
Yeah, you're
is
good.
communication.
Oh, yeah.
And is the ability to communicate with a diverse group of people. You know, because we are working towards biculturalism in a lot of our systems, and we're already working towards multiculturalism in a lot of our social networks here in New Zealand. You know, like we're a melting pot, just like the UK is, and just like Australia is, and just like a lot of the world. So communication is crucial now more than ever when kids are being born into, you know, communities that don't speak a lot of English, you know, and that's not like, it's not a bad thing. And a lot of people actually, and that's something that a lot of people are going to have different opinions on. And I'll humbly say my piece, but that's, you know, like people are entitled to that. But I think before you can argue that, you should be able to speak, you know, te reo, or at least like conversational. But anyway, sorry, that's a different thing. What I was saying is communication is important, and communication, I think, is what will change the world, because you see it in politicians like Chloe Strawberry. Is, you know, like she's good at, you know, like her lingo, like that whole woke lesbo thing was great. It was hilarious. You know, like a lot of people got a laugh out of that. A lot of people, you know, like I think it was a really positive turn of something that was intended to be negative and homophobic. But her ability to connect with us as a younger generation is going to be so crucial, because the disconnect between the older generation and us is so wide, and we talked about it with like me and my parents and stuff, is we need people to bring that back together. And we need people like this, doing this, having these kinds of conversations, open to different generational like views.
Should get Zoe on the pod.
Honestly, yeah, like it'd be dope. It'd be dope. And because, like I was saying before, like, you know, we'd have a way better chance at getting Chloe Strawberry on the cast than we would of Christopher Luxon. And that speaks to how willing these politicians are to actually listen to us.
Chloe, sorry, not Zoe.
Oh, Chloe, sorry, yeah. But no, I think that communication and expression and understanding will change the world. But it's just about, and I don't know, historians talk about it when it comes to revolution. You know, like when there's a revolution, there's usually a small number of people who end up in positions of power in this revolution, and it's largely because of their abilities to communicate.
Yeah.
You could use other examples like Hitler. You know, like Hitler was
hell of a talker,
a hell of a speaker and a talker and a communicator, and he did things and he touched on emotions in people in a very negative and a very bad way, and he did it with an agenda, but he also did it very well, and that's something that I don't think you can actually like refute and deny.
Yeah.
But yeah, communication, and I think like it makes me a little bit excited because I love communicating and I love the idea of like uncovering different ways to communicate, and I've recently gotten really interested in the idea of how people communicate without speaking, because, you know, I think that's something that I have taken for granted for so many years, because my brain does a lot of that for me, you know, like, and I go off vibes a lot, which a lot of people, especially people I've spoken to who are further along the autism spectrum, like they have to go through life without that shit. Like they have to go through life being like, you know, like not necessarily understanding tone or facial expressions or things that I take for granted.
Yeah.
And that, again, is in communication. It's going to help people understand a bigger idea and a wider picture and a wider goal. And if we can start it early, like in school, like, you know, mandatory, fuck math, communication skills. You know, cultural diversity, you know, like get out and do a haka or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely plenty of communication going on through high school. You talk a shit ton, and you definitely learn a bunch about what other people are talking about, but I don't disagree at all. And I believe that that's, you know, the point of the conversation. Is that I'm communicating.
Yeah.
My idea.
Yeah.
Well, not my idea, but this concept, because I'll be far from the first to have come up with it, and I believe I'm just curious as to whether or not it's going to resonate with people in that way. But if you're looking at it from a numbers point of view, very black and white, it's quite simple to just say if everybody's talking about the same thing, then it's very likely that thing is going to manifest itself into reality in a shorter span of time than it will if less people are talking about it. So yeah, I'm curious about whether or not this is going to go the distance, but it's not because I'm curious if once it goes the distance that it will have the effect that I think it'll have, because I know that's just a fact. It's not a crazy thing to conceive, and it's something we've seen in history, and it's something that happens repeatedly when people get behind something and literally, like you said, get in the street and go for a walk and just say, this is what we want. That's what we get.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not always that simple, but it's, if you have enough people, then yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
And it's not, you can really go into it and talk about it in a lot of cool and spiritual ways in terms of energy and consciousness and collective thought, and you can talk about it in a scientific way in terms of waves and frequencies and all of that, and you can talk about it in a political way and talk about a majority and it's just numbers and opinions and all of that,
and right and stuff.
But at the end of the day, that's how shit works.
Yep.
And it's a good thing that we have had such a history of people in political places being what they are. And I know that sounds real fucked up, but the reason for it is because, eventually, hypothetically, say I gather enough information and feel I'm in a qualified enough position to do so. Yeah, bro, go ahead.
Thanks.
I'd have a go at being Prime Minister or 5 clicks. At being Prime Minister or doing a party. Like, I'm obviously going to do the Citizens Initiate referendum, provided that there's enough of a following from the conversation, which there will be, like not in an arrogant sense, just in a fact of my determination. I know that I'm going to spend time talking to people, and even if it takes me 10 years, I'm going to eventually talk to 10,000.
Beautiful. That's the only way you're going to get it done.
Exactly.
Is that belief and is that drive.
Yeah, well, it'll be, but that's the thing. It doesn't necessarily have to take that long, because if I talk to 100 people that talk to 10, there it is. So it's like,
oh shit. Yeah. Great. That was great, dude. That was awesome. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, it's not a lot of numbers, bro.
Yeah.
It's actually not that many people that I need to talk to.
Yeah.
Like, and the intriguing part about it is that, I find it interesting that people question the efficacy of that when it's literally word of mouth is the most simple and powerful form of change and force in the world, but it only has that ability and its strength is dependent upon how many people are behind it. Otherwise it's just cancels out because you've got people fighting over things that are highly contested. And I'm curious as to your thought on this, man, because I don't know if this makes any sense, but I've been peddling it for a little while and I'm going to keep doing it. Do we just consistently try to vote on stuff that's really disagreeable, or is it just that most things are? Because I think that there's actually certain things that are extremely agreeable that we don't vote on. It's like, for food, water, and shelter, for example, if there was a vote, not necessarily about making it all free, let's just even go before that and just say there was a vote on whether or not you want the New Zealand government to put resources into creating a body of people that get behind research and development for this, like, to become a possible reality, and they will come up with then something else that we can vote on that's more clear and concise and actually has a plan behind it, So are you willing to make a plan to make a plan? That's an easy thing to say yes or no to. It's not like, it's not even we're going to spend money. It's like, we're hypothetically going to do something. Do you guys reckon this is a good avenue? It's like, that's something that I think most people would be like, yeah, give it a go.
Yep.
You know, fuck it, why not? Give it a try.
Be like, you knock on someone's door and say like, hey, do you want to vote yes or no to making food, water, and shelter free?
Yeah.
It's like, how many people are going to say no?
Yeah. So, no, but that's the thing. A lot of people, because they're going to be like, no, I don't understand how that works. No, you know, but if you say, look, we don't know how it's going to work, but do you want to vote on trying to figure out how it can work? Because if we can, that'd be sick.
Vote on being able to vote.
Exactly. That's why it's not called the conversation. I called it the conversation concept, because it's actually a step away from it. We're not trying to plan it out. I'm just seeing whether or not people want to plan it out, you know?
100%, dude. And it's a really good...
So weird.
A really good, like thought to kind of like mull over, because you're totally right, is that there are some things that universally, I think, like most people are going to be like, yeah, like we need that and we want that. However, the system that we live in, you know, like there is things in place that stop that, and there's things in place that intentionally make it more complicated and more difficult to get those really easy questions answered. And you look at referendums like the cannabis referendum, and it's really interesting because there's as like a cannabis user myself, and as somebody who's at least like, you know, familiar with the world and how it is here in New Zealand. It's absolutely crazy to me that we would bring this referendum into like the public domain, and there's been absolutely no attempt to even look at like a transitional system for gang members, for people who, because, you know, like what was it, a couple of years ago, it was like 80% of adult males confessed to smoking marijuana recreationally, or there was some really, really high statistic, and it's like if it's that heavy in terms of usage, like there's already systems in place to get it, and we know that, but there was no, like I didn't see a heck of a lot when it came to like what's our plan to transition people who are building their livelihood off of the black market sale. Because if you're planning on releasing people from prison for non-violent drug crimes when you legalize it, surely you would open up avenues for people who already supply it to continue to supply it through legal chains, right? And because you're never going to get majority vote when it comes to like people, you know, like the gangs and other providers of marijuana, you're never going to get a yes vote unless it's like realistic in terms of how you're going to transition that. And that, I think, is just part of the. It's just one example. Sorry, it's only a tiny little part of the problem, is that we're not being asked the right questions. And the Te Tiriti o Waitangi, that bill that came through, that's a classic example of the smoke and mirrors in politics. And it's like, you know, like there was foolish. It got the whole nation enraged so much that 10,000 people are mobilized because they were so outraged that it was never going through. It's unrealistic. But what did they do behind the scenes? What was happening while we were all outraged at this thing, you know, that was on every single headline and that was at the front of every single social media page for so many weeks. Yeah. And that ties into what I've written down here about why this and what we're doing is so important. And it's examples like All Gas, No Brakes from the United States. He just fell into an incredibly influential position in terms of the US election and US politics because he was on the ground. And he had a social media following because he was doing all this goofy, wacky shit with rappers and stuff. But he was on the ground and he was videoing everything that was happening. Capitol riots. He was, you know, like he was actually talking to people who had a completely different perspective on what was going on, like in the world. And suddenly, you know, like it went from this kind of goofy thing where he's wearing a shit suit from Goodwill and asking funny questions to actually genuinely getting some like conversations going in terms of what people think's happening in the political sphere in the States. And I think that's really important here because our, you know, like our main outlets in terms of knowledge is oftentimes, you know, like One News and TVNZ and all of these big established companies that, you know, like they got fingers and pies in terms of funding for political parties and you'd be a fool not to think that that they had agendas and conflicts of interest. So it's the little guys, it's the dudes on the ground who are rocking down to Cabana on a Saturday and interviewing people about what they think about this referendum for food and water. And, you know, like that spreads online and then more people are having this conversation about the food and water. And, you know, suddenly people are like, yeah, what the fuck? Why don't we have, like, you know, why can't we, you know, have a say? Well, I do want to sign that, you know, like that petition or whatever. That's I think, why this is important because it ties into communication. It ties into, you know, our ability to sit here and, you know, like drink some tea and, you know, like talk about marijuana in a way that I'm not freaking out about the shareholders that are, watching this and they think, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job as a news anchor because I brought up a really important issue that somebody has a problem with up the food chain.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of even taking this a step further. Like, you can go down to Nolimi and you can spend $60 on a microphone and you can go out and you can interview people about things. And I think if you ask political questions, it's a great opportunity, out and about as part of like the cast or the collective or the idea of the conversation is to ask the question. And then when people are like, oh no, I never really thought about it, then we'll be like, well, why not? Like, what if we talked about it like this? Like start that conversation up, spread the.
I love when people haven't heard about it when they're like, what? Yeah. I'm like, oh, bro, imagine, right?
Yep. And
just so, bro, imagine food's free, right? Okay. You there? Cool.
Yeah, bro.
What do you reckon?
I can do it.
Pretty sick, eh? Yeah.
No, I love so much of what you are working towards building with this. And it's like, it's realistic and it's wholly positive. It's really cool and it is also so doable. It's part of the reason why I was so keen to come on.
Yeah, man.
Why I'd love to go away, live a little bit, then come back on again.
Definitely, bro. Welcome back anytime.
Yeah, like this is, to put it boldly, what I see is kind of like the future of the transaction of information in New Zealand. And it is, it's a transaction, of opinion, of energy, of loads of different things. However, I think this has got to be the future because it's this salt of the earth, this bare bones, and we have the ability. You got your iPhone propped up there so on easy. Like a desk chair. We got
it's such a crazy setup, hey.
The mic pimp, it's possible.
The like $10 iPhone holder from Kmart on a desk chair, just hanging on for dear life.
Yeah,
and it's doing the thing. You got to make do with what you got, and I think it's it's actually a laugh when I think about it now, to think about how long that I spent assuming that I needed to do so much more before I could consider doing something like a podcast and putting out music is another one. That one I can't really say that I've overcome that, because releasing music that I have right now that I've mixed is daunting because it's not mastered and it hasn't been mixed as well as it could, and this, that, and all the other things, and a billion other reasons why it's not ready. And then I listen to it and I'm like, yeah, I like it, it needs certain things. I'm not going to lie. This, like, obviously now that I've gone through the passages I've gone through and been in rooms I've been in and seen people like Thomas Oliver mix stuff to a standard that I've never thought conceivable to watch in front of my eyes and make it look so easy when it's not at all.
Yeah.
And you can't help but go, man, there needs to be a certain level before I can start. But starting is the whole point, and continuing to put out whatever you have now is what is the journey that you eventually look back on, that you go, wow, look at all of that. And I think that in terms of the podcast, I was just way more ready to take that leap because I feel like I'm just that little bit more passionate about it. I care more about it. I'm interested in it. I don't get tired from it as soon. I feel way, you know what, actually? The main thing is that I just feel way less anxiety about talking about it out loud and sharing it with people. Like if somebody asked me about the conversation concept, I would dive in and go, hell yeah. If somebody asked me to play them my music, I would be like, hell yeah. But I would have a little bit of a thing in my stomach, like, ooh, I'm worried, I don't know if it's as cool as it could be or whatever. But that's, I don't know whether that's because of the amount of passion I have for one or the other, or whether it's just a natural thing with art. And this is something that isn't technically art. It's more, it's just a conversation, it's just chatting, and I'm, like you, it's always come quite natural to me, so it doesn't build that same nervousness.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the reason.
That's a great way of putting it, actually. It doesn't, yeah, because it's familiarity.
Yeah.
And it's the whole trial and error.
Yeah.
People take it for granted, but I've been failing and succeeding in conversation for my whole life. There's times, man, where I was working like in like a restaurant, working a section, and you're chatting to customers, and they'll ask you a question, and you just fuck it up. You're just like, oh, it's like, here's the the soup, It's like and the lady asks for a spoon, and you're like, you too, thank you, and you just, like you screw it up, and you walk away, and you're like, oh no, that was dumb, and you lay in bed and you think about it, and like there's little things like that I think we take for granted, because skateboarding actually is probably the example I would bring up that ties the best into what you're talking about, because there's things that I can do on a skateboard now that 15-year-old me would never have dreamed of. And it's the idea of like being realistic about your abilities and being realistic about what you can do, and having goals as to what you could do. And I say the same thing with painting. Like you talk about it with the music mixing. For me it's in terms of painting and technique, and getting things to look the way I want them to. I'm very fresh, and there's a lot of people out there who are doing a lot of incredible things, and I have goals, and I've already achieved a bunch of those goals in the short. Like, I've been serious about the art since November of last year, and I'm already making stuff that I never would have thought, oh shit, I can actually like make that with my own two hands. And having those goals, having that realization, ties into one of the most important points that I think I philosophically have ever talked about, and it's knowledge versus experience.
Right.
Because it's the same as nature versus nurture, as you don't have one without the other, and they're both impacted by each other, and knowledge is really important, but experience is really important, because you can have all the knowledge, I've seen it a lot with my mental health. As I was trying to teach myself a lot, and I was trying to educate myself on mental health, and I was doing a lot of reading, and I had all this knowledge, but I was lacking in experience. And once my life started providing me with experience to almost back up the knowledge, it became tangible. And it's like, oh yeah, food's another great example. Like, we are all taught by Harold the giraffe that your 5 fruit and veg a day is the best thing for your body. But even with all the teachings from my parents, all the teachings from Harold, all of that knowledge I had in terms of what I put in my body and what it does, I still went through years in my teens of eating nothing but garbage and drinking way too much, and putting these things in my body that were making my life harder. It wasn't until I consistently started changing that knowledge and that experience came together to create like a tangible change in my perception.
I feel real good.
Yeah, I feel real good.
Maybe that's because I've been eating well.
It's because of this, and it's and it's that I think is really beneficial, and is something that people, I think, people that I have spoken to miss out on, because they think that it can stop with the knowledge. Just because I know it means that I can't be tripped up by it. It's like addiction. So everyone's told that like if you do certain things that you'll become addicted. But there's a great quote that says that the chains or the bonds of addiction are so weak that they cannot be felt. Until they are so strong, they cannot be broken. And it's like you can know that methamphetamine will build a physical addiction in your mind and in your body if you use it consistently. However, going into it, going through it, coming out of it will teach you so much more than just reading about it in a book. And that's why lived experience is so important in the mental health and in the social service industry, because it's tough to connect with somebody when there's less of that lived experience. It's not impossible, and it's not like undoable and unachievable and unrealistic. It's just so much easier when you can sit down and you can be honest without fear and without judgment, because I've seen it with conversations with people about hard things like addiction. I've seen, once they understand that I have experienced it myself, there's a little bit more comfort in the air. There's a little bit more openness, and that's one of my favorite things is
knowledge versus experience.
Knowledge versus experience.
Interesting.
Again, I had that written down because that was one of the ones I was like, if I could even carve out like a minute, I'd love to talk about even the concept of it, because
it's a great one.
Yeah, it's something that's kicking around in my head quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's time has taught me a lot, and it teaches everybody a lot as they go on through their life, and that's because of the experiences that give you knowledge, and the knowledge that you have that's backed up by experience, like you say, they really do go hand in hand. I think what are my thoughts on it? Well, knowledge is gained through caring about something enough to want to understand it and being curious enough about something to wanting to learn how to do it. Sometimes through experience directly, but sometimes there's that reading aspect or whatever it may be. And everyone's going to learn a different level of information about every different facet of life. And everybody's going to have a different experience because of that. I mean, yeah, I think it's one of those underlying things that's present in everybody's life in terms of it being an aspect that everybody has. Everybody learns stuff and everybody has experiences. But it's also, again, one of those things that's extremely diverse and different once you start to look into it. It's everybody's experience of those things are different because that's how life works, living in different shoes. You over there and me over here, and this all happening in between and around us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a good thing to consider, and it has a lot of, like, I think you made all of the important points around, you know, the balance between the two being crucial, and how one kind of can feed the other in a really beneficial way as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think I just wrote down, because what you said just then made me think of like where we get knowledge from, right? Because that's a really interesting way of looking at the concept, is where do we get knowledge and where do we get experience? And it's one of the fundamentals of life, and it's one of the things that no matter how you're born, lived, and die in this world, is that you can't avoid breathing, you can't avoid eating, you can't avoid sleeping, drinking water, and learning. You can't avoid learning. We will always have teachers, and we will have many teachers throughout our lives who inadvertently teach us, who intentionally teach us, and we have teachers of different calibers, teachers who will affect us in different ways. And knowledge is, I think, something that that comes from teachers. Even the concept of being able to teach yourself anything. Elon Musk loves saying that you can teach yourself anything with the internet. And it's like, well, no, you can't. And I think that's why teachers and why education is so vital. If you're given access to absolutely everything, how much are we learning the wrong way? And that's one of the most important things that I learned in terms of my journey through addiction, was unlearning things and unlearning ways that I was looking at the problem and the idea of the problem versus the solution. And experience, I think, is one of the best things that unteaches us. And experience, for me, has untaught me so many things. And one of them was, like, I'll use an example from my personal life, is that I smoke marijuana, and I often mix it with tobacco. And tobacco mixed with marijuana changes the effect for me. And it was something like, I'd find myself, there was nights where I wouldn't have any tobacco, but I'd have marijuana, and I wouldn't want to smoke. And then in my eyes, it became like, oh, so it's actually not that easy to stop smoking. But it was, like, that isn't actually the crux of it. It was a lot more complicated than I was making it out to be. And it was the experience of then spending my last $38 on a packet of durries instead of buying food that taught me that it was actually different. It was, it's something that's habitual. It's something that's chemical. It's something that is biological. Like my father has a history of usage as well. Yeah. And so there's lots of different things. And I had all of this surface level knowledge, and it wasn't until I had the experience that I almost unlearned that. And the experience was working in a place, working in a sector of mental health, and discovering that I actually wasn't. It's the right way to say this, actually. I wasn't providing help as best I could because I wasn't healthy in my own right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't in as good a place as I could have been to have provided the help I wanted to. And then stepping away from that area, actually getting better in myself physically and mentally. Now I feel like I could step back in there and I could do better. I'm not going to change the world or anything, but I could still practice safely and practice effectively in that space. But yeah, the experience, I love. That's actually, I haven't said it out loud like that before. But yeah, you gain knowledge through teachers, and experience is something that can really help you to unlearn things.
Yeah.
But having that framework and having that idea, or even being taught that idea of knowledge, because like, you know, like you become the teacher when you have these conversations, even on a podcast that people might watch this and be like, oh, hang on, that makes a lot of sense. We've become teachers in that regard.
Yeah.
And I hope that then somebody's experience would either prove or disprove what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
Because, my brain's on fire and I need to pee like crazy.
Yeah. Go for it, bro. Go for it. I can always chop out a pee break as well.
God, this is beautiful.
I am forever grateful for living here, bro. Every day I wake up, I just go, yeah.
So many different colors that we've been through in the last like half hour.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Sunset's my favorite time of day, bro. As the sun's going down, it's just, it's beautiful.
It is.
So have we covered everything on that list of yours?
Everything except, what do I have? Podcast talking points. Hell yeah. Oh yeah, actually, there is another thing, and this is like a really cool, like positive thing, but it derived a lot from personal, like lived experience.
Shoot.
But it's my time in the theater. So I've been acting on stage in like musical theater and community theater here in Hawke's Bay for like 15 plus years.
Right.
Started when I was 9. It was one of the first things that I did when I moved to Hawke's Bay, and my mum was trying to find, you know, because she had kind of pulled me out of Taupō and out of school and out of my friends' group system at a really crucial, pivotal developmental point. And she was looking for a way for me to get involved in things. And so I auditioned for Oliver Twist, and I didn't get in. And then a couple of weeks later, a kid dropped out, and I did get in, and I got to do it, and it was like this great awakening experience. And then I really enjoyed it. And I was kind of just itching to do more of it. And then high school provided a bit of an outlet. I was blessed in high school to have a great drama teacher, and to have a drama teacher who was like invested in us. And then there was Nids.
Who's that?
Oh, it was Jade Hannum. So she actually
Shout out
teaches.
Jade Hannum.
Yeah, shout out Jade Hannum. She actually teaches at Havelock now.
Love a good teacher, man.
Which is really cool. Yeah, one of those absolutely pivotal characters like in life. And I think from that point, it was, like there's this thing they do in Havelock called NIDS, the National Youth Drama School.
Right.
They used to do it every year. I don't know what it does since COVID, but that was another, especially coming from like Central Hawke's Bay, where there's a theatre scene there. But when you're younger, there's a lot less for you to do outside of like the Christmas shows every year. And NIDS brought together a whole bunch of kids your age, like 500 kids. And put them all in the same place for a week, like in the last term of every year, and it was like I've chatted to a bunch of people who I went to NIDS with, people who've been in years previous, years since, and it is a really incredible experience to see something that you love almost validated by so many other people. Coming from a small like country kind of community like Central Hawke's Bay. It was dope to see other like-minded kids my age who were into the same stuff as I was, and that was pivotal. But there's lots of little things, like the reason that I had that written down in my notes was because there are actually times, like in hindsight and in reflection, there's times that things have happened to me in the theater that were trivial at the time, but I think really impactful for my like development, like as a man. And one of them was I was in a show when I was 14, and it was my first straight play. So no music, no anything. It was a straight play. It's called Glide Time. It was written by Roger Hall. It was a New Zealand playwright. And it was a really old play. I didn't get a lot of the references. I remember going home and Googling what I think there was a joke about Corso, which is like old Salvation Army or something.
Okay.
And but I had to go back and it was cool, but my costume was this grey suit and they gelled my hair in a certain way and I thought I looked so stupid.
Yeah.
I thought I looked like an absolute idiot. And the director told me that this is what my character is going to look like. Like this is, stop fixing your hair, stop, fixing your suit, like changing your suit or whatever, like wear it like that.
It's not your hair.
This is how you need to look. And then I went out on stage for like 14 performances and was seen by, over 200 people looking like that.
Yeah.
and that, I think, you know, like in accepting that and understanding that taste almost, you know, it's like what I think looks good isn't just the universal. And it was almost like it was because it was an experience you couldn't get around, because you're going out on stage, you got to do what you're told, especially at 14, and like nobody, you know, nobody came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, your hair looked weird on stage." Or, well, that was a strange looking suit. Everyone was, you know, it was a really positive experience for me, and being comfortable in identity and comfortable in
uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, and in uncomfortable situations and in my skin.
Yeah.
And that's the other talking point that I had written down is all of the times that I've really progressed in my life have been in situations where I'm out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like a perfect example would be the show that I've just finished up in Hastings. With,
that looked cool.
Beyond Reasonable Doubt. Written by Jeffrey Archer. It was great. It was my first, like, or it was my second play, sorry, up here in the Napier Hastings area. And I bit off so much, bro, on that play. My role was tiny, so I only had one line, but, you know, like, there was a lot that I put into, like, character development, and there was a lot of, in terms of interaction and world building that, you know, I was trying to actively be involved in, instead of just sitting on stage and delivering the line. But then I also painted the set. I was helping with makeup, and for a lot of that, especially the set painting, I was just like, I just had faith in abilities that I was going to develop. You know, like, I was just like, yeah, man, I can do it. Like wood grain, yeah, bro, I can do wood grain. On the whole set, like it'll be sweet. And it was more than I could chew for a bit, but I was uncomfortable when I pushed through, and like it was a really, really positive experience. And I think you get that a lot, like first time going out on stage and performing in front of people, or first time going out into an auditorium, like with, you know, more than 100 people, because there's a jump. When you do like the little theater stuff, and then you go to a place like Hastings Operatic, like, you know, like, because you boys were in Hastings Operatic recently, eh? Like it.
Where's that?
The big Hastings. The big Hastings like theatre, sorry, the one that's been renoed. I don't actually know what it's called. And the Hastings Municipal Theatre, District Theatre or something.
Oh man,
because I saw Tommy was there. Tommy shot.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, tip of my tongue, bro. Tip of my tongue. I've been there a couple times too. I can't remember. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You can appreciate like playing at a place like Cabana, even when it's packed out. Like you got 100 people in there. And then going and stepping into a place like that, and it being like packed, like that kind of stuff, and then going out and achieving something that you're even like skeptical about. Like, because I've always had an overflowing amount of confidence in terms of performance, but there are still times where I'll come off stage and I'll be like, oh shit, I didn't actually think I could do that. Like, and you know, I did it. Like, it's done. And there's a real,
it's crazy high.
Yeah, there's a real zone. Like athletes talk about it a lot, and I experience it really vividly on stage, where, you know, like you'll come out and the audience is there. You're doing what you've done 100 times before in rehearsals, but the audience is there. There's a dude sitting sometimes from me to you away, and you know, like, and depending on what you're doing, they're either there or they're not there, in terms of the character and in terms of the world and in the environment. And, you know, your heart rate goes up, and, you know, but you can't go out there and suddenly start speaking like, you know, like you can't go out there and let your adrenaline take over. And, you know, like you've got to keep level. And it's, you know, harnessing that zone and that energy. And then not only harnessing it, because it's quick to come, and it's very, 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 it's also very, very quick to fall off. And you see it with characters like mine in Beyond Reasonable Doubt. So they would come out, and a lot of times your half-ass actor is going to come out, and he's going to be onto it, and he's going to be reacting, and he's going to be conscious and present as a character for the first 10 minutes. And then you're going to see, you know, you're going to see him sit back, and then there's nothing. And then things are happening on stage, and reactions are needed but not there. And it's because that high comes, and then you get comfortable. And especially if you don't do anything or say anything, your energy can just fall off. And it's the tell of like a really good actor to, you know, to keep that energy consistent. And then you take those skills and you put them into, you know, like real world scenarios, like working in a bar, you know, like de-escalation in bar scenarios, which happen in my career so many freaking times.
Yeah,
you know, when it comes to alcohol and stuff, and being able to be in a situation where everything's heightened and still keep it. You know, that's massive skills.
It's a valuable skill.
Theater has so many outlets like that, and so many really amazing ways of showing diversity and expressing, like skills in communication and all of these awesome real world skills. And I bring this up, and this idea is like an awesome talking point that I had mentioned to you that even I was thinking of making a podcast to talk about, because a man who I admire and a man who is a pivotal figure in my life, who I met through the theatre, funnily enough, and have worked with and worked for on multiple occasions, had expressed the desire and almost the dream to basically work for so long and then to obtain a government grant to create a facility or a service that uses theatre and rehabilitation for so many different things, in terms of trauma or in terms of addiction, in terms of, like other mental health related issues that people are experiencing, and how theatre could be used to rehabilitate like that and to help work out problems, because it's just so palpable how much it's helped me throughout my life and with my insecurities and struggles I've had with depression and struggles I've had with communicating with, say, my parents. Theatre has been so like fundamental in the person that I am, and I see that for anybody willing, it could 100%, it could very easily have that impact. And there's great places like Habit, like Hawke's Bay Youth Theatre, and like a lot of the schools, like especially like Steiner and Havelock North High, have got really good programs and really good people working in those programs that can make a lot of change even with very little. So I think theatre and like or the creative arts or the expressive arts, or if you like, because I want to make more of a blanket term for it, because not everybody wants to get out there and sing and dance in a funky costume, and it doesn't have to be that. But the skills that it gives you in expression and in terms of gathering thoughts, because you do this kind of shit, right? Like not losing things that go on in your head, because when you're doing the same thing as the same character over and over, you can really explore what they go through emotionally.
Yeah.
And playwrights like oh fuck, here we go. Now I'm gonna playwright. I'll take the safe route. I use Shakespeare. Playwrights like Shakespeare do it like really well. There's a great example. I did a show last year called Murder on the Menu, and it was a Shakespeare modernization. And so I played the ghost of Hamlet. However, the ghost of Hamlet was played in a modern theatre, or a broken down theatre that this play was set in. And it's so funny because Ophelia, who, if you don't know the play, is Hamlet's love interest in their actual Shakespearean play. She has this beautiful line, and it's like, like before you took me to bed, you told me that you loved me, but then after you'd taken me to bed, you said you couldn't love me because I slept with you. It was something along those lines, and but it's so beautifully written that in one line she almost completely encompasses the entirety of like their relationship in a single line. Whereas this play that we're in, that was written by some modern lady, who I can't remember the name, sorry, but like there was so much like there was a bit of like waffling in the play, to be honest with you, and there was a bit of roundaboutness with a strange twist at the end. But Shakespeare was able to capture and communicate such intense emotion and such a crazy story arc in just a line, which I thought was spectacular. And that's why he's the GOAT. That's why he sold 4 billion books, and that's why we see movies like 10 Things I Hate About You, which based on The Taming of the Shrew. So yeah, theatre I think encompasses human nature. Yeah, and it just expresses human nature. And I actually, I would like to also try and consider myself a playwright. I am trying to write a play.
Yeah, then you just keep doing it, and then you're it.
Because I think that there's some real quality here, and it might just be that I am a theatre kid, and that this is just my passion and my love, and it may not reach as far as I think, but I think it could benefit a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it'll reach all the theatre kids, man, and all the about to be theatre kids. and anyone who, like myself, has an art form that they express themselves through in the same way. Because that's, I gain a lot of understanding about the world through my music, and the reason is because I gain a lot of understanding about me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's is understanding the world, because your world always starts with you.
Yeah.
That's why you got to be your own best friend, man. It's a good thing.
And it's a cool concept too, because being your own best friend is a concept I've come across so many times, like throughout life. I even think that when I was seeing a therapist when I was 18, and even they said it then, and I never really understood the concept of it. But it's so simple. It's like, how do you treat a friend?
Good.
And it's you treat yourself that way,
Yeah.
and you because you have to want to be your own friend, which means that everything in here has to translate to everything that actually happens, like out here.
Yeah.
And for me, that was art. And once I started doing that, I actually started really liking the person that I was on the outside because of all of the stuff that he was doing and all of the stuff that I could show people and pull out on my phone, or to come here and to have these conversations. I like this person that I am because of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whereas for so much of my teens, I was smoking weed and watching that 70s show.
Yeah, but that's
And
what it's for, though.
I know, but over such a long period of time, there was no fulfillment.
Yeah, but that's what you can compare now.
Yeah, and I don't take away from anybody that gets fulfillment from that, but
Yeah.
for me, it wasn't fulfilling, and it led to a dark place. And then putting more in my life has led me out of that dark place. And I'll still go home tonight and chuck on One Piece and blob on the couch before bed.
Do you know what I find, bro? Is that I do get fulfillment from doing nothing, man. I feel fine.
Yeah.
I feel great chilling and hanging out. If I could just chill and hang out, I would chill and hang out. And that's also a little bit of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because, part of me, even though I know that work and doing stuff is a really important part of life, part of me is pretty keen to just chill out, man. And I don't mean it in the way of do nothing, but I don't know. I could use a break every now and then, and it's not like I'm hard done by, but for whatever reason with my wiring, I think every sort of, I don't know, maybe like 3 months, just a week, to do
So
nothing,
healthy.
or maybe 3 months every year or something like that, because I don't know, maybe that's just hardwired from high school or something. But the point is that it makes me giggle because I kind of go, this is really crack up all the stuff I'm talking about and the amount of work and time and effort and energy I'm going to put into this over my lifetime. But it's all because I just like chilling out.
Yeah.
And I think people should chill the fuck out more, man.
Yeah,
Just calm down.
You know
There's
that.
so much stuff going on. It's like people
Yeah.
act like it's the end of the world. And when you see people communicating, you're like, wow, it's so intense, isn't it? And it's like, no, it's not most of the time. Nothing's that big of a deal. And by the time you get home, you giggle with somebody about how that happened. And it's like, these simple things, these simple pleasures, and the way that life is enjoyed for the most part,
Yeah.
the way we look at it is depending on what the question is, it's like if you're being asked about change, then you look at the world as such a restricted thing. But if a child asks you about the world, it's like it's full of potential. It's got everything you need. You can turn it into anything you want. You can be anything you want, and you can, and we can, and I believe that.
Yeah.
It's just interesting how that paradigm and the way that we talk about it changes as we get older into adulthood and all of that sort of stuff. It's just it's an interesting one. I want to ask you before we wrap it up, if there's anything that you have that, a little quote or something that you'd like to give people, or something that's helped you. Could be a story, could be whatever. It doesn't have to be anything at all. But if there's anything you'd like to say before we call it a night and probably play a game of chess or something.
Something that I would want to say at the end of something like this would be, or an impression that I would want to give is just constantly be constantly looking backwards, and be constantly reflecting. And reflection, I think, is something that can be really, really hurtful, because you can dwell on things and you can hold them to you know, you can hold on to mistakes and you can dwell and you can end up there. But reflection is also, in a really forgiving sense, it's really helpful. And I think that reflection and being honest, like with yourself, is a really, really positive tool. And I think that so much of what I have wanted to talk about and so much of what I brought to talk about is actually, it's so clear in my head now because of reflection and because of like lived experience and because of knowledge that has changed because of those experiences. That's my big one. If you remember anything out of this, it's knowledge versus experience. That's my big one, and that's like the one that I would love to just talk about for all time, and just understand how everybody like feels about it.
I look forward to next time that you're on and the gap between now and then and how your feelings have
you've got
developed.
like you've got all like this stuff and all these notes and stuff, so I can go and I can reflect about like the stuff that I've said. I can watch this back, and because this is a great tool for reflection, like what you're doing here.
Oh, bro, it's gonna be crazy as to look back on these.
Yeah. Because my voice memos is like in my phone is it's like Pandora's box.
Yeah, dude.
Like you go in there's a bunch of locked ones as well that because you scroll through it, you think, what the hell is this guy doing? And it's because there's a lot of times where I'm thinking something, so I make it real by saying it, but I'll go back to it and reflect on it later, and I think this is awesome.
Little audio diary.
Yeah.
Hard.
But that's what I would leave. That's what I would leave anybody listening to this or watching this with is reflect.
Beautiful. Well, brother, thank you, man. I appreciate you coming on and spending the time.
Thank you for having me, and I very much enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, me too, bro. Fuck yeah. Put it in the bag.